sitting across the desk from me. This is an interview taking place on July 19th, 1991, as part of the Bar Foundation Oral History Project. Pauline, it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon with you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your early life, where you were born and how you came to New Hampshire?
Well, I was actually born in Boston, in Jamaica Plain, but my parents and Mary Swain were living there at that time. But when I was 2 years old, we moved up to New Hampton and lived here in New Hampton. Well, I've lived here most of the time since, except when I was in school.
Were you educated in the New Hampton schools?
I went to New Hampton School, graduated on the centennial anniversary in 1921.
Did you go right to college after that?
No, I didn't go to college. I stayed home for a year. And then my father, who had a law practice in Boston, suggested that I come down and help in the office, which I did. And then the next year I went to night school to get my stenography, shorthand and typing.
When did you start the study of law?
Well, after I'd been working in the office a year or two, I decided that I really was interested in the legal end of it. It was fascinating me. And my father gave me a set of Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England. Said, you read that, and if you still want to study law, we'll see about getting you into law school. I devoured it.
And then you started law school?
I started law school, and I went to Northeastern Law, which was then a night school. I don't think they had any day school for law. They did for engineering, but I don't think for law. And it was held in the old YMCA building out on Huntington Avenue. And the last part of the time they were running out of space, and we had classrooms over stores on the street across the other side of Huntington Avenue. Northeastern's a little different now.
When did you graduate?
I graduated in 1928. Took my bar exams, Massachusetts bar exams that June. Meanwhile, Dad had decided to move his office up here, and he wanted me to come up with him. He said we won't be busy enough for 2 lawyers in Bristol, but inside of a week we hired a girl to run the office, be in the office, while I was at the Registry of Deeds.
Who was your major client at that time?
The registry, the title business was easements for the Public Service Company, who were running a power line from Goffstown to where's around it? North Woodstock.
Mm-hmm.
And we did the titles for easements from the Woodstock-Lincoln line to the Franklin Hill line. So by the time we got through, we encountered a good many titles.
And those were all in Grafton County, right?
No. Some of them, they crossed the river into New Hampton.
Into New Hampton.
And actually there are a few, when you get down in the hill, you're in Merrimack County. I don't think we went south of the Hill Franklin line.
What was involved in doing these easements and the title work?
Examining the title back they didn't ask us to go back more than 20 years. Some of them we found the people didn't even have any title for 20 years.
Were you trying to identify the landowners as part of the process?
Well, yes, to some extent, although they had a right-of-way man with whom we worked who bought the easements, made the deal with the people whose land they were crossing. Of course, the engineers were doing the surveying as to where the line went.
Were you doing other title work besides working for public service?
Yes, it began to come along. As I say, probably the first year I was here, I used to spend a week at a time in Grafton County, in Woodsville. But more and more, of course, other things came along, collections.
Did you, you said you graduated in 1928, and then started practicing in New Hampshire in 1929. How did the Depression affect your business?
I don't seem to remember much about the Depression having anything to do with it. Wasn't that a couple of 28? The Depression was more in 32. Because that's the year I got married, and we said, it can't be any poorer than we are now. It can't get any worse.
When you got married, did you continue to practice law?
I still continued to do titles for my father.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do other work because he had a secretary in the office for that time. But when somebody had to go and do titles, go to the registry, my mother would take care of my children.
In the early days, how did you get up to the registry?
Well, a good deal of the time, if I was going up, as I say, I'd go up and stay for a week, and then I would go up on the train from Ashland, and the train ran into Woodsville. Of course, the registry then was right in Woodsville, not in North Haverhill.
Mm-hmm.
So
and you'd stay somewhere local while you did the work?
I'd stay with the old tavern on the other side of the river in Wells River, Hale's Tavern. He had quite a bunch of us there because there were people doing titles for one of those title insurance companies. They were doing the titles for the Grafton power line that went down through Alexandria. Oh, I guess, doesn't it? We had a very congenial group.
How have title standards changed over the years?
Well, they certainly are much more strict now than they were when I first started doing them. As I told you earlier, I was trained because my father was an examiner for the Massachusetts Land Court, and so when I first started doing titles under his direction in Suffolk County, or Middlesex County, Boston and Cambridge, I did them according to their standards, which nobody in New Hampshire had ever heard of, I guess.
And when you came to New Hampshire, were things different?
Yes, as I say, they didn't really know what a real title examination was, and none of the lawyers liked to do it anyway. I think they didn't know how, and they didn't like to. Even the better class of lawyers, I don't think would do. They'd rather be trying a case than they would be spending time in the registry of deeds. I don't suppose they could make as much money then, because after all, the valuation of the property was not so great, and we couldn't make the charges that you would nowadays. The responsibility wasn't as great either.
Mm-hmm. We were talking earlier about what would happen when a bank was going to loan money, and how the title work was done for mortgages.
Yes, I think the banks usually would write to the register of deeds and say, "Is this man own the property? Are there any mortgages on it?" And that was it.
And so no title work was done on a mortgage?
I presume that probably in the cities they must have done more, but I'm talking about a little place like Bristol and the Bristol Bank, for whom we were doing.
Do you recall when that began to change in New Hampshire and how it changed?
I don't know, as I could say definitely. Seems though it's gradual, and well, one thing maybe one thing did with the federal government requirements for home administration loans. Is that what I want to say? Because certainly they began to go back 40 years. They used to think 20 years was plenty.
Mm-hmm.
That's 20 years plus one, so anybody who have a generation growing up, maturing to 21,
Mm-hmm.
21 of course being the majority age limit. I think probably that may have started it. I wasn't doing as much by that time because I was raising my family.
When you, how many children do you have?
4, 2 boys and 2 girls.
And they were born over a span of how many years? 8 years or so?
Let's see, John was born in 33 and Mary in 41. That's more than 8 years, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And during that time you continued to do some title work for your
yes.
father? Mm-hmm.
Some probate work, some title work.
And you worked out of his office?
Yes, I worked out of his office.
And that was in Bristol, was that?
He had an office in Bristol, right on the square in Bristol.
Did he practice with anyone else?
No.
And
There was no other lawyer in Bristol at that time. I don't know. I don't think there was any lawyer in Bristol at that time. That is, there were people who did titles, who drew deeds and that sort of thing, but they were not lawyers. Mr. J.P.
at some point that changed in New Hampshire.
Yes, I guess so. I don't know. It's hard to tell. These things change gradually, I suppose, and of course I was more or less out of it to some extent for a while, because my father died in 52, and he'd been sick. He had a shot, and he hadn't been practicing for 6 years, I guess. So it's hard to figure dates.
But then sometime later, in 1958, you opened up your own office in
That's
Bristol?
right. By that time, my youngest child was in high school, so that there was somebody to look after the children. I guess the oldest boy had graduated from high school, and he was working.
And what were the circumstances that led you to open up the office at that time?
Well, there was nobody. George Ray was the only lawyer in Bristol at that time, and he was in the Attorney General's office, so he was only there on weekends. And some of my friends said, "Well, why don't you go back practicing law?" And of course, it was a little temptation. So I rented an office on a temporary basis, thinking I'll see how it works out. It lasted about 20 years, I guess.
And then you moved your office here to New Hampton as part of your home?
Yeah, what was that? About 4 years ago, I think.
In 1977 or so?
I decided that it was time to take things a little easier. I didn't, and of course there's plenty of lawyers in Bristol now.
Tell me what first attracted you to the practice of law, back when you were in your dad's office doing secretarial.
I always liked history, and as I said, I think I told you earlier, when I began to get interested, Dad bought me a set of Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England, which I still have there in a bookcase, and said, after you finish reading that, you still want to study law, we'll think about getting law school. And I devoured it. I loved it. Anybody who liked history, I think, would like Blackstone, because of course it's a whole history of England. One thing always amused me after he told about all the disabilities that women were under, particularly married women, such as the great care and prudence of the law to protect women. I can't remember to quote it exactly, but something like that, and it's always amused.
Did you feel at any point in your career that you were that those laws that were there originally to protect women, in fact, were a hindrance to your career?
No, I don't think so. I think I wrote a letter to the Barnums here a while ago. Who was it that wrote the letter? A letter about that somebody thought they were discriminated against in this. I can't remember which lawyer it was, I don't know. But she wrote a letter and said she didn't think she'd ever been discriminated against. And I wrote a letter to that effect. It's around here somewhere.
That you hadn't felt discriminated against.
But of course I probably was in a little different situation from the way some would, because I was working with my father. I think it probably was the first, because I did practice with him for a couple of years after I was admitted to the bar before I got married, so that we practiced as Swain and Swain for 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think it probably was the first father and daughter firm in the States, as far as I know.
Were there other women practicing in Grafton County at that time?
I think there was one other when I started. Merrill, I can't remember what her last name was.
What was it like taking the New Hampshire bar in 1929?
It was nothing like the Massachusetts bar. The Massachusetts bars, I remember, we had an examination in equity, we had an examination in evidence, we had an examination in this, various torts and contracts and so forth, very much as we studied them in law school. In New Hampshire, you had to figure out what applied to the question, which was much more sensible, probably.
Mm-hmm. How did you go about studying for the New Hampshire bar?
Well, as I say, somebody gave me a list. Winthrop Wadley, I think, who was a friend, a cousin of my father's, gave me a list of leading cases. And I borrowed the New Hampshire reports, which they had in the Bristol Why Not Sleeper library. They gave me a key to the library, and I could go in there and read those cases, which I did. And that's the way I studied for the New Hampshire bar. Of course, in Massachusetts, we had a bar review course in law school. And you had copies of all the recent bar examinations, but you didn't get them in New Hampshire. They didn't distribute them. You couldn't get a copy of an examination.
And it was all written essay, no multiple choice?
I think it was all written essay. I don't think it was any multiple choice. There might have been in Massachusetts, I can't remember. After all.
It was a long time ago. What do you particularly like about doing title work?
I suppose it's that slant towards history.
Mm-hmm.
What happened trace it out and see what happened when and where. And that's what I'm working on now a lot, on the New Hampton history.
You spoke earlier about being a member of the New Hampton Historical Society.
Yes, and trying to get a program worked up for next Sunday.
Are you writing a history of New Hampton or compiling one?
I wrote a brief history of New Hampton. I don't have a copy of it here because I loaned it to somebody. I got asked so many questions from the schools. Well, we'll come in and talk to the school about this and that and the other thing. But I finally wrote it down, and the typewritten copy got worn out, and I revised it and wrote a new one, which the New Hampton Historical Society published. We had a committee, and somebody else chose the pictures for it and so forth. I was always a little disappointed because I don't think they did a very good job.
It's on again if you're ready.
Now, let me back up a minute though. There's a Clarence Gordon Swain.
That's my father.
That's your dad. Okay. So he was originally from New Hampshire, and then really went down to Boston.
Mm-hmm. I installed them in these various mills,
Mm-hmm.
probably the textile mills, I imagine, mostly. Anyway, anything that needed power, water power.
Mm-hmm.
And with the result that the children were born in various places. My mother's family was similar because her father was a minister, so their family were born in various places.
I want to go back and ask you about your education. Was it typical for lawyers to go right from high school to law school without a 4-year college degree in between?
Don't know. When we came to check, well, to go back a little bit further, of course, it would be like my father went to, what would you call it, apprenticed or clerk in a lawyer's office. Mm-hmm. That's how he started studying law. And then the lawyer with whom he was working in Franklin was appointed to the bench so that he could no longer have students. Mm-hmm. And then Dad went to Boston and went to Boston, not Suffolk, the other one. Anyway, he went to law school down there, but he took the bar exams and passed them, so he never finished law school. When I graduated, he said, they never can take that away from you. They may disbar you, but you've got your degree. Uh-huh. And he says, I never got mine, because he said I had a chance to start practicing. I passed my bar and start practicing. And I wanted to get married, and so I never went back and finished my degree. I think usually, I don't know how many, I wouldn't be able to guess how many of my class had a college degree besides.
Mm-hmm. Were there many women in your class at Northeastern?
Not a lot of women. I wouldn't think there was even a quarter, maybe a tenth of the class. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell. Surely, I'm not sure how many there were in the class. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. And it was a 4-year night school course?
Yes, it was 4 years of night school.
Did you go summers too?
No. Well, no, it was just an ordinary academic year.
Do you have any interesting stories or anecdotes to tell us about doing title work?
I don't know. We used to have some stories about various places, descriptions and so forth. The one that I had was a description began at the northeast corner of a white birch stump. I think they got the wrong preposition in there, I'm sure. And then somebody else had one that began at a hole in the ice. Presumably, I think it probably began at a spring where there was a hole in the ice. I think that may have been the explanation of it, but I remember those two in particular.
Did you ever, when you were doing titles, go out into the field at all, or would you rely on surveyors and
No,
others
we
to do
didn't.
that?
Like if you could find a survey, not very often,
Mhm.
bounded by so-and-so's land and so-and-so's land and so-and-so's land, and probably, very likely, it may not have been changed for the last 50 years. I remember one piece of land up here, I think it's the thing that the town, the lot that the school took for a ski tow up on Burley Mountain. And it began at a sumac tree. And that description was carried for about, well, I got it back about 100 years. And they're still talking about a sumac tree. And the owner said to me, well, I'll find the wall if you'll find the sumac tree. Considering sumac trees are only bushes and don't last very long, I don't know what they ever did for a survey, if they ever did survey it. John French is this person to talk with, or some of these old surveyors.
Did you, in your law practice, do a lot of probate work?
Did some probate work. You get quite a few wills. I still get called in sometimes to prove a will that I drew a long time ago. I got paid the other day for a will that I drew. And when they came to probate it and I looked in the file, there was a check there that I'd never cashed. The executive paid me the check. Made the check good.
How have fees and changed over the time that you've been practicing law?
How's what?
How have the fees changed over the time that you've been practicing law?
I told somebody once, they said something about a fee, and I said, yes, I've drawn a lot of deeds for $1, but I don't do them that way. I don't do them now. And I probably don't charge anywhere near what most lawyers do anyway. After all, I don't have any overhead.
But back in the early days, you charge $1 for a deed.
Yeah, I'm sure I can remember charging $1 for a deed.
Do you remember what the recording fees would have been back then?
About 50 cents. Not over $1.50.
Mm-hmm.
Some deeds today, seems though I saw that was marked with the recording fee was $1.50. Certified deed probably cost you $2. You wanted a certified copy. Plain copy would be $1. And of course the probate fees were way down. Of course, you had your special term of probate court, which has been changed.
How did it work when you say a special term? What do you mean?
You paid the judge $10 for a special term of court.
Oh.
They did that just a few years ago. They changed it and raised the salaries of the probate judges.
And eliminated special
And
sessions.
eliminated the special term, which ought to be, because it wasn't right or fair.
In what way wasn't it right or fair?
Because it meant that somebody who could afford a special term could get his work done.
Mm-hmm.
But if he couldn't afford a special term, he'd have to wait until the regular term of court.
Mm-hmm.
get his account allowed, or his will allowed, or whatever.
Have you seen changes in the practice of probating wills and doing accountings?
Oh yes, of course, they're much more strict now with it. Varies a lot with the judges, but we talk about funny stories. I remember, I guess it was Judge Dodge. I don't know how we hadn't. I guess we were waiting for a witness or something. I can't remember, but anyway, we were visiting in the office, and he said something about, well, my children interested. I said, my little girl says she didn't want to be a lawyer because you had to have your house to keep clean. I said, you know what it meant was that I'd say, oh, I've got a client coming, you better pick things up. That was when I didn't have an office of my own. I had people coming to the house, you know. They would. Judge Dodge threw his head back and howled.
So for a while you practiced out of your home?
Oh yes, I did. I had people, you know, there are always people that are looking for somebody to do something. Get something done. As I say, there were not lawyers available, and so I didn't claim to, but I would have people that would come want a deed drawn, or a will done, or a will approved, or something of that kind.
Now, did you do your own secretarial work, or did you have a secretary?
Except when, as I say, when my father, after I left the office and he had a secretary, I never had a secretary of my own. Sometimes I borrowed my next door neighbor's secretary for something.
But you would do your own typing?
I've always done my own typing. I don't think I was quite as bad as Malcolm Thompson. He did his typing this way.
So it was common for lawyers in those days to
More or less, I think, to a great extent.
It wasn't just that you were a woman and therefore it
No,
was...
I don't think it was. But I think quite a lot of lawyers, of course, probably if they were fairly active, most of them would need a secretary. They weren't all like my father. I don't think he ever touched a typewriter. It's funny because his father was a mechanic and he was the most unmechanical person he ever was. I said, told you his father was a mechanic by profession, and if there was any machine to attend to at home or on the farm, I did it. He didn't. I took the separator apart and cleaned it. I drove the car when we finally got a car. No, my mother drove it.
But your father didn't?
He never drove a car. He'd sit there kind of tense, and I said, Dad, you might just as well relax. You don't know how to drive this car anyway, so you might as well sit back and relax. Well, you went too close to that mailbox.
It's interesting because in this day and age with computers and word processing, many lawyers who didn't used to are now doing their own typing and drafting and editing.
And to me, that's absolutely mysterious. I don't know what it's all about.
The word processing in computers, right?
I see people do it, and it's an absolute mystery to me. A few years ago, I did think I'd like to take a course in computers and so forth. And my son has a computer which he uses. He does bird banding, and he uses it especially for his bird records. He works in the post office, and he makes up the box lists and so forth for the post office. The postmaster was thrilled when he found he could do that. And change them, you know, as they have to be changed. But I don't know. I just didn't start in early enough, that's all I guess.
Did you see any changes as a result of the microfilming of the records in Grafton County and other counties?
Nothing, only I hate them. And I think quite a lot of the older lawyers don't like them.
Doesn't feel quite real.
Well, for me, they're a little hard to read. I think they're improving. If I remember right, the Merrimack County ones I can handle better than the Grafton. I guess Grafton's improving too. I don't know why I should kick, because one of the things I can't do is handle those heavy books now. If somebody wants to do a title, I said, you've got to drive me to the registry and pass me the books, because I can't do it.
You're still doing probate work, though. That's what.
Yeah, I hope I don't have any more. I ever get this account settled that I was working on today. One of those complicated things where the man died and his wife died a week later. I was right in the process. The son had contacted me and wanted to get powers of attorney from them, but they died before we ever got them drawn.
And they left wills.
She didn't leave a will. He left a will. And he left all his property to all his children, 6 children, and his wife, to be divided into sevenths. And she died without a will, and she left a bunch of children by another husband.
That is complicated.
I don't know. I guess we'll work it out.
And were you the named executor, or?
No,
They just came to you?
they came to me because
Mhm.
I drew the will. That's the one I told you. When I pulled the file, I discovered there was an uncashed check for drawing the will. I charged him $35 for drawing the will and never cashed the check. That's a fairly easy thing to do. I probably was at his house, you know. He
Mhm.
gave it to me. Quite likely I may have gone to the house and he gave it to me and I stuck it into the file.
Mhm.
Never took it out.
Have you practiced in any other areas of law besides probate and real estate?
Not much. I used to do some collections. And, yes, you get a contract that has to be drawn or something like that.
Mhm.
Just a kind of a general practice, drawing all sorts of things. I never did much of any trial work, and I never did any criminal work. I wasn't interested, for one thing.
Mhm.
And if you haven't done it, you're not competent to do it. You should keep away from it.
Agreed. What, looking back over your life, Pauline, and looking at the pattern that you created for yourself of having 4 children and kind of slowing down the practicing out of your home, and then going back in full time when your youngest was in high school. Do you feel you made the right choices in retrospect?
I'd do it all over again.
You're happy with those choices that you made?
I don't think I'd change it.
I know so many of women lawyers struggle with those decisions and make decisions, and it's interesting looking back whether you feel you made the right decisions.
Well, I think I had it easy.
In what sense?
I never made a lot of money, but I wasn't interested in making a lot of money, so long as I had enough to eat. And we had a farm, raised enough food, canned enough to run us through the winter.
When you say we had a farm, you and your husband, or?
Yeah.
Mhm.
My husband and I, we had a farm.
There's a lot of work involved, though, in that.
Oh, yes. I was younger then.
Excuse me?
I was younger then. I can't even keep up my flower garden now. I don't do anything with it.
But you had a farm with dairy cows?
No, just a couple of cows for our own use.
Mm-hmm.
But Well, we didn't farm commercially anyway. It was just as I said, my husband was working on the highway or on electrical. He did the electrical wiring and quite a little worked with an electrician. And he wasn't trained that way, but he picked up a lot of it. And worked on state highway, worked on the town highways. And so we had the, a farm for our own use.
Mm-hmm.
I had 4-H clubs. Children were in 4-H. I think that's something I didn't put down. I worked with Extension Service some, but more particularly. I had a 4-H club 2 different times. First time the children were small, I remember going around to Judge Gardens with the baby, carrying the baby on my hip while I walked around and looked at them. And then later, when the children got older, they were in the 4-H club. Very active in it. John had 4 years of it, I guess. Ann had 4 years. They were in Scouts, but I never was very much, as somebody said, all I did in Scouts was furnish transportation. That's what a lot of mothers have to do.
Right.
Then when they got into high school, they decided they couldn't handle Scouts and 4-H, and they wanted 4-H instead.
Mm-hmm.
They had various projects. Cooking. After John went to work for somebody, he taught the woman there how to make bread. He learned how to make bread.
And that was something you had taught him?
Yeah, he'd had that in his 4-H class.
Mm-hmm. Did you,
I learned a lot of that. I was not the domestic type. My sister was supposed to be the domestic type. But I was the one that got married, and so I had to learn to keep house.
and your mother lived close by and could help with, your mother lived close by and could help with the children?
Yeah, she helped too. I could leave the children with her. Particularly since I was working for my father anyway.
Mm-hmm.
If I'd been working for somebody else, it might have been different.
Did you ever have a partner or take
No.
anyone else into your office in Bristol?
No.
Let's take a break at this point. Okay.
Grafton County Bar meetings, they used to be real good fun, even if I didn't play poker.
Are you saying that they used to play poker at the bar meetings?
I'm sure they did. Well, I don't mean at the business meetings, but then the dinner and so forth would be over. So near that place I used to go. Well, I guess they probably had a program too. What was it? Bob Jones had that gambling, some kind of a game that we used to play at noontime. We'd go over, a bunch of us would go over the White River, not White River Junction, over the Wells River.
Mm-hmm. From the registry?
From the registry. Kind of a penny ante thing. I don't know. I don't remember now. I can't remember how it went now.
But it was something that you did on your lunch hour.
Bob Jones was judge of probate then.
And they had Grafton County Bar Association meetings on a regular basis, annually, or?
Oh yes, one for each term.
Mhm.
See, they had the 3 terms of court.
So they'd open up the term of court with a.
Yeah, I think, as I remember, that's what the usually was. I don't know, forgotten what they are, because of course I get a notice, but seems I do Belknap County.
Mhm.
But I don't go to any evening meetings anyway, unless, I went to that one when Ruthie invited me. She said, Pete and I want to take you to that meeting.
Mhm.
Of course, I didn't know at the time she wanted to get me, they had to give me that picture.
That was that bar association
Mhm.
meeting where you were honored
Yeah.
in Belknap County.
Ruth says I always get something I like myself. I think it is beautiful.
It is lovely.
Beautiful color.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm interested though in going back to the Grafton County Bar Association meetings, what they were like.
Well, I can't see, I was trying to think. It's a long time since I've been to one. They'd have a business meeting after court adjourned in the afternoon,
Mhm.
4 o'clock or so, and then they'd go over to over to somewhere for dinner.
Mhm.
I can't think of the name of the place now. It seems awfully vague somehow, because I haven't been to one for a long time.
And then you'd usually spend the night.
I had spent the night because I could, it would be too late to drive back
Mhm.
after.
Mhm.
And of course I was driving alone.
Tell me about your office in Bristol, Pauline.
Well, the first one was up over the drugstore in Bristol. And it was what they call a flat, railroad flat.
Mm-hmm.
4 rooms, one back of the other.
Mm-hmm.
The front room we used main office, and then we had the back offices. We had the bookcases we had these bookcases in the middle room, and then the back room more for a private office.
And are you talking about the office with your dad, or are you talking about the office that you
No,
opened
with
up with your
Dad.
own?
Yeah, that's when I was
With your dad. Mm-hmm.
And we had our own. We had heated ourselves. We went downstairs, 2 flights of stairs for a soft coal-fired furnace.
So during the day you'd have to go down, fire
Yeah,
up, keep the
once or
furnace
twice.
running.
Soft coal doesn't hold too well. I don't think we had any hot water. Don't seem as though we did. If we wanted hot water, I guess we had a stove in the back. In the back office, we could have heated water on if we wanted to. And the back office looked right out onto the Newfound River.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty. I have pictures, I guess, probably of it. And then the next one, when I opened my office, was over the hardware store. It was on 2 Pleasant Street. That was around the corner from the square.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasant Street goes up towards Lake Street,
Mm-hmm.
up towards Newfound Lake. Pleasant Street goes towards Danbury, and the lake branches off and goes up the foot of the lake. And there I had, B. Shattuck had the front office, and I had this little small office back of hers. As I say, it was narrow, so I always used her telephone.
And B. Shattuck was in the real estate business, is that
She was
right?
in real estate, Newfound area properties. And she has given up. She's something like 98, I think. she's still around.
Good for her.
11 years older than I am, so she must be 98 this last May. Then, and then we moved. Actually, they moved while I was in California that winter. We planned back and forth over the telephone because the landlord went up on our rent unreasonably, we thought. We all three moved out.
Who was the
So
third person with you?
Dr. Aiken, the oculist.
Uh-huh.
And he's still practicing in Laconia, out on Pleasant Street. And for quite a while he was running both places, but I guess he's given Bristol up now entirely. But we were all together on Pleasant Street, and then, as I say, he practically doubled our rents, and we couldn't get any heat anyway.
So
But he did. He wanted to charge us enough rent to pay for a new furnace, because we were kicking about the heat. We didn't think we wanted to pay for a new furnace, so we all moved out.
And that's when you moved to Central Square?
Moved to Central Square, and the landlord there renovated the apartment. It had been an apartment. They renovated it for our offices, and we planned it. We and Jim mostly planned it. As I say, with consultation over the telephone back and forth. So.
And then in 1977 you moved your office here to your home.
And then I decided, yes, I'd had it getting back and forth, getting out the window. It's so nice. I don't have to go anywhere if it's snowing. I have a very nice neighbor across the street who comes over and shovels my path as soon as it snows. So I get spoiled.
Pauline, it's been wonderful to talk to you.
I don't think that my career, if you call it a career, is at all typical, but I've enjoyed it anyway.
In what ways do you see it as atypical?
Well, as I say, because I worked with my father and the background.
I would imagine that many of the women lawyers who began practicing when you did, and for many years thereafter, would say, my career is not typical. There were no patterns.
That's true.
You were creating your own mold.
It's true. I can remember what Merrill's name was, and I can't think of it now. I don't think it's in the law directorate either.
Were you involved at all in the state level with the Bar Association and formation of the Unified Bar?
No, I wasn't involved at all. Of course, I followed it. I always read the bar note.
Did you think when the bar became unified that was a good idea or a bad idea? Do you remember if you?
It's probably a good idea. Somebody I knew was kicking on that we had to pay a fee for reimbursement of people with that cheated.
The client indemnity fund.
Yeah. Client indemnity fund. I think that was back before they really started it.
Oh.
But why should we have to pay for that?
What was your position?
Oh, well, I think you've got a responsibility, professional responsibility to some extent. we had trouble right in Bristol.
To what are you referring to?
Robert Racine. I don't know. I don't think he got this bad finally, but he was suspended a while. But I don't think he was in Bristol at that time. But I guess some of the funds did go just where they should have gone.
It's
My dad said once, I wonder that more lawyers don't go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He says they do have such a lot of responsibility for people. I guess they check up on them a little more than they used to.
Right.
There's more of them.
But there seems to be more money that's going through lawyers' hands too. I think it's needed.
Of course there is.
Well, Pauline, thank you again. It's been a pleasure.
Kind of fun going over ancient history.
I've enjoyed it.